You're listening to the Men's Dating Mastery Podcast with host Alec Chase, bringing you the experts in dating, sex, and relationships.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the MDM podcast. My guest today is Kevin Alexander, who is a dating coach, an author, and a fellow podcaster, which, as you can imagine, has a special place in my heart. Kevin is a really dynamic guy, and I had a blast speaking with him about the misconceptions around nice guys. We talk about what a nice guy is and what he's not, which may serve as a reality check for some. We talk about some of the crutches that nice guys use to prevent them from achieving success with women, the underlying tendencies of so-called jerks and assholes that make them attractive to women and that nice guys could really learn from, the true meaning of confidence, the right time to initiate sex and the excuses that guys make for not going for it, some very interesting historical facts behind the Madonna Whore Complex, which is something I refer to quite frequently on this podcast, and something that really appealed to me personally, and that is how guys can do better with women by living out, as Kevin puts it, their truth, their passion, and their vision. I also appeared as a guest on Kevin's show, the Nice Guy Dating Daily podcast. So if you'd like to hear me in the hot seat, head on over to niceguydating.ca/082 for part 1 of the conversation and niceguydating.ca/083 for part 2. Hope you enjoyed the interview. On a separate note, if you have been keeping up with the podcast, then you already know that one of my guests, Frank Kermit, has been kind enough to give away 3 of his products for free to you, the listeners of MDM. These products are an ebook called The Emotional Needs of Women, a 3-set audio program called The Art of Charisma, from Creepy to Charisma, and another 5-set audio program called Pimpin' Your Pad. These are serious, in-depth products that normally go for $270. Frank was generous enough to give them away for free in order to encourage you to keep listening to the show. To get them, all you need to do is go to the show notes for episode 14 called Using Body Language to Create Attraction with Patty Contenta, or episodes 15 and 16, which are parts 1 and 2 of my interview with Frank Kermit called The 10 Emotional Needs of Women. You can find all 3 of these pages by going to the podcast page on mensdatingmastery.com and scrolling through the list. Once you're there, just click on the link under the title Free Giveaway at the top of any of the 3 pages to get the downloads. Like I said, these products represent $270 in value, which is why they will be available only until September 16th of 2015. After that, the only way to get them will be to buy them just like everybody else. So get them while they are still free. Now on to the interview. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Alec, thank you for having me on. Definitely an honor and a privilege to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your backstory?
Sure, absolutely. I would love to. So first and foremost, I always love to share pretty much one of my beliefs before I get started. And that is, I firmly believe that every nice guy can finish first with women. And he can do so by discovering the truth inside of him that every nice guy is in fact a natural and that every nice guy is desired by women. And I always like to start with that to really give you some context as to everything else I'm going to tell you as to why I do what I do. So as Alex said, I'm Kevin Alexander, and more specifically, I help shy introverted guys in their late 20s, early 30s who identify specifically with being a nice guy, but even more specifically than that, who feel that they're finishing last with women. And I know that I certainly felt that back in the day. I know that a lot of guys who come in feel that. And, you know, Alec mentioned the podcast, the Nice Guy Dating Daily podcast that I do. One of the things I talk about is where nice guys finish first. And one of the ways I talk about guys being able to finish first is by living out their truth and their passion and their vision, because I firmly believe that these are 3 core areas where a lot of nice guys who feel like they're finishing last are leaving to the wayside. And when I talk about my own story, it goes back about 3 years ago, actually. And I was lying down in bed next to a girl She was in one of my t-shirts. She used that as her pajamas, one of my t-shirts. She was drooling on my pillow, and she wanted to be in a relationship with me, but I knew that I was settling for less, so I was putting the brakes on it. But she was still trying anyway. And I remember this night so distinctly. I look over at my phone, and I had just sent that, hey, I want to be more than just friends, to this girl, Chantel, that I really wanted to be with. And Chantel had just written me back, and I remember looking over. Stephanie was lying there. I look over at the text from Chantel, and it's that message of death, right? Go back into the friend zone, you. And I just remember feeling, because I'm 30 now. This is 3 years ago. I remember thinking, I'm 27. Man, I need to get this figured out. And so that's when I started going on a journey to figure it out. And I started getting in touch with other dating coaches, figuring out what that was, getting into the personal help, personal self-development sphere. I ended up ending things with that girl because I knew that I was settling for less. And I started going on this journey. And what I ended up finding out was that the reason that I felt like I was finishing last was because I wasn't living out my truth. I wasn't being true to myself. I wasn't doing what I want to do with my life, with who I want to be. I wasn't harnessing my passion. And I didn't have a vision for where I wanted to be, for where I wanted humanity to be on account of my actions. And so ever since that day, 3 years ago, that's pretty much what I've been working on, is identifying, okay, what's my truth? What's my passion? What's my vision? And always driving towards those. And as part of that journey, as part of that transition, I kind of refer to myself now as like a bodhisattva, which is somebody who could become a Buddha, who could become, an enlightened being, but they're holding back so that they can guide other people on that journey. And that's what I'm doing with guys who are essentially where I was at, right? Late 20s, early 30s, who identify with being a nice guy, because we don't want to be a jerk or an asshole to get women, not by any means, and who identify with feeling like we finished last and saying, dude, like, come on, I'm going to help you. We're going to get there. And this is what you got to work on.
So your podcast is called Nice Guy Dating. You affectionately refer to your listeners as Nice Guy Nation. So I think it would be fitting for you to describe, and I hope this is not redundant, but describe, what is a nice guy according to you? What's your definition of a nice guy?
Beautiful. I love that you asked this question. So thank you. Oddly enough, it has different meanings. And so I always refer to it shortly by saying, I'm not that kind of guy anymore. So let me get into that. A nice guy is essentially a guy with immense potential to be an amazing guy. And he can be a total winner with women, because all women say that they're looking for a nice guy. So he can be a total winner with women. He can be a total winner with life. But there's obviously something that's holding him back. And what is it? And a lot of times, as nice guys will say, oh, well, women just want jerks and assholes. Well, let's go further than that, right? And it's usually us. And that's where I was. And it involves basically having shot myself in the foot in fashion, exercise, diet, social skills. I was doing it in all of them. And what it was doing was preventing me from having success with life in general. And therefore, it was leading to an unfulfilled life, obviously without women or without the success that I truly desire. So the way that I look at it now is, a nice guy, by my definition, is a guy who has a negative belief system in place about any facet of social life. But the distinction is that expecting to receive the good life without putting in the work. And I think that's the main thing. That was me 3 years ago. And a lot of the guys who come in on Nice Guy Nation, I see it now too. It's this idea of, well, I deserve a hot girlfriend, or I deserve the promotion at work, or I deserve whatever it is. And then when I say, okay, well, what steps have you taken to do that? And no steps have been taken. And I ask, okay, well, what about changing social skill status or fashion status or anything like that? And immediately it's like, well, I don't want to work on that. So a guy who has a negative belief system in place about incredibly positive experiences, fashion, exercise, diet, social skills, those kinds of things, and expects to receive the good life without putting in the work.
So it almost sounds like your definition of a nice guy is really the definition of a lazy guy.
Yes, basically. And that's really the interesting thing about it is that what I noticed with me especially, and then my transition over the last 3 years, and I noticed with the guys now who are at the beginning of their journey, is we almost hide behind this idea of a nice guy simply because women say they're looking for it. I don't know if that's the actual reason why, but I've noticed that I used to hide behind that. Well, I'm a nice guy. 3 years ago when I first started getting into dating, I remember I was out with this girl and we went out on 2 dates. She brought me back to her place and her roommates were there. We were all in her bedroom talking. That should signify enough. It does to me now. It didn't back then. She gave a look to all of her roommates. Roommates all nodded. The roommates left the room and it was just me and this girl. And she gave me bedroom eyes, which meant that I should go, do something, kiss her, try to have sex with her, whatever the case may be, right? She wanted it. And I didn't know what to do, so I didn't give it to her, right? And I remember she was crying and she said, "Oh, you're such a nice guy." And I remember thinking like, yeah, I'm a nice guy. This is good. I'm going places. But really what ended up happening is she felt rejected. And that's kind of the only thing that she could say is, "Oh, you're such a nice guy." And what I ended up learning and finding out was that there's 2 different kinds of nice guys that women talk about. There's the nice guy that gets rejected because he doesn't know what to do. He's faltering on social skills. He's faltering on living out his truth, his passion, his vision, which I talk about. He's lazy. He doesn't have that drive to do things with his life. He's very status quo. He's very complacent. In some cases, he could actually have a really nasty ego, what I call the nasty nice guy. He's not nice at all, actually. He's actually really, really very jerky. He says he's not. And then there's the nice guy that they say they're looking for, which is actually more of a good guy. And what that means is that he's a guy who's not a jerk. He's not an asshole or anything like that. But he has drive. And what he drives towards in his life is to better everybody else's lives around him. And I was definitely not that guy 3 years ago. I can admit that. I was very much negative about all sorts of things. I was very much lazy about all sorts of things. And it's been a tremendous transformation seeing that in myself and then seeing that in other guys and guiding them towards that light that says like, no. It's not women that are the problem. It's you that's the problem. And this is why. So let's go ahead and find that fire that's deep down inside of you. Let's go ahead and light that fire. Because in that fire, there's passion. There's drive. Let's go ahead and make that happen so that you can become a light into the world. That's why you're here. That's why you were born. So that every single day you have the opportunity to shine some light on the world. I know it sounds kind of woo-woo or kind of foofy, but really that's why you're here. And by light onto the world, for me, that's doing the podcast. That's guiding guys to a better life, to lead a better life. For other people, it might be other things. Who knows? If guys listening in are a lawyer or an accountant, if you're a lawyer, it's to bring justice to the world, right? Or if you're a police officer or whatever, it's to bring justice to the world. However it is that you shine your light onto humanity, that's why we're here. It's not to just consume Hot Pockets, right? It's to actually contribute to humanity.
I want to go back to something you mentioned right at the outset, and that's that your audience self-identifies themselves as nice guys. And one thing that I've observed is guys who do that sometimes have such a strong identity with this notion of being a nice guy. And when those tendencies start to sabotage their success with women, they might actually protest it and they'll proclaim something like, "I refuse to be a jerk," or "I just refuse to be an asshole because I'm a nice guy and that's who I am." What do you say to a guy like that? Like, how do you challenge that belief system?
Well, it's funny because you mentioned it's a belief system, which is true. It is a belief system. It's not a healthy belief system. It's more of an egotistical belief system. And I'll get into that because there's 2 reactions. There's 2 reactions that I have to that. And it's funny. You mentioned that I had a client over and I was working with him on stuff and an email came in and I had been working with this client for a while. And the guy actually said verbatim, I'm a nice guy and I refuse to be a jerk or an asshole. And I looked at my client, David, and I said, "David, what would you tell this guy?" And he said, "Be a jerk or an asshole." And it was just funny that I've been working with, my student for a while. And I mean, we're talking like tremendous success. He started out not knowing anything about women and fumbling. He now has a Brazilian girlfriend. Like she's a model, like she's gorgeous. And it was interesting that he said that. And so that's my first reaction is, okay, well, be the jerk or the asshole. My second reaction goes a lot deeper than that, but let me talk about the first part of it. Because here's the thing, Alec, is clearly if there are women who seem to be attracted to jerks and assholes, then let's be scientific about this. There must be something that you can distill from these guys. There must be something that you can distill these particular traits that the guy would think, or that you would think that these guys are doing to get girls, that's obviously working, right? Because if your ethos is, oh, women are attracted to jerks and assholes, and I refuse to be a jerk and an asshole, what you're saying is, I refuse to do what works, which doesn't make any sense, which is why it gets back into the ego. Because once you start getting into the ego, things start to not make any sense, and illogical statements start getting made, such as, women are attracted to assholes, and I refuse to do that. Okay? Well, then you refuse to do what works, right? That's my first reaction is, well, just be the jerk or the asshole, right? Because if you're truly this nice guy that women want, and if you're truly a catch, then let's talk about this magical combination. What happens where you take the nice guy that you already are, and then you borrow from these jerks and assholes who are apparently insanely successful with women. You're going to have the best of both worlds. You're going to become completely unstoppable, right? If we were to follow this logically. So why not try that? Which is exactly what my student was said. Just be a jerk or an asshole, right? But let's go on to my second reaction, because my second reaction is much deeper, and this is some Matrix type stuff. So, Alec, I'm Neo, and we're going to go a little bit deep on this one. I love using the Matrix as a reference. But here's the thing. As I mentioned before, by being a nice guy, specifically who has negative beliefs about incredibly positive experiences, right? Such as eating healthy, exercising, being social. That was a huge one for me, especially being an introvert, being social. And eating healthy. Are you kidding? I would rather order a pizza than eat a salad. Completely different now, right? Completely different now, and my body obviously looks quite different because of it, right? But the thing is that when these guys have negative beliefs about incredibly positive experiences, such as eating healthy, exercising, being social, truly living the good life, then what this guy is actually doing is being, in fact, the jerk or the asshole that he is protesting against. And so if I expand on that further, let me go ahead and bring up another email that I received from an actual client. And because he asked me a question that really strikes a chord with this question that you asked, aside from the original one, like I refuse to be a jerk or an asshole because I'm a nice guy and I want to be a nice guy. And of course, obviously I agree with that, aside from it being an illogical statement. But let me bring this up really quick. And this is verbatim. This is what a client actually asked me. And he said, a question that is in my mind is, if someone you're dating backs out of a commitment, like a concert or a trip that has been paid for, is it appropriate to go back to her and say, quote unquote, you made a commitment, you own this problem. If you can't go, you'll have to pay me for the ticket. Or should I take the path of, quote unquote, I know things come up, I'll let you make it up to me. How about we go out next Tuesday night, your treat? Kevin, what are your thoughts on right? Kevin, what are your tongue. Exactly. Kevin, what are your thoughts on these two options? Now, I remember being this guy, which is why I'm so empathetic about these situations. But we can go for a long time on this one, right? Especially you're like, dude, I'm biting my tongue. Like, I know. Trust me, I drop kicked him in the face over email. But my thoughts on that are that he is a raging egotistical douchebag, a complete jerk, and a total asshole. And why? Well, because nobody owes anybody anything. And what he's doing is harboring resentment and negative emotions by feeling as though he needs to be seen as important. While at the same time, his opening comments to me when he first started working with me is that he's not just a nice guy. He made sure that I knew he was the fun and successful nice guy. Okay, well, where's the fun? Where is the success? Where is the nice guy? And so the thing is that a lot of times these guys can be delusional and actually end up being hurtful emotionally to women without even knowing it. And I'm going to admit it. I was that guy 3 years ago. I was just like him. I was emotionally abusive. When I look back at past relationships, I shudder at the things that I put, previous girlfriends through. Where did I learn it? I learned it from my parents. My dad was that way too. more than likely my grandparents were, although I didn't see my grandparents together. But I mean, that's typically how it happens, is it just travels down through the lineage. And at some point, somebody has to say enough. And that's what I've done. Instead of carrying it forward, I finally said enough. So to answer your question, Alec, it really comes down to looking deep inside and asking yourself, am I ready for a relationship? And if you are, then be logical, borrow the traits that you think are working and go get the girl. Right? But if you look deep inside and you see that you're actually harboring negativity and resentment, then it's time to resolve those inner conflicts first, which is exactly what I told this guy. Right? I was like, these are not two different options. They're the exact same side of the same coin. It's this idea that she owes you something. People don't owe anybody anything. Right? Because until then, you might think that you're being a nice guy, but you're actually being the very jerk and asshole that you protest against, right? Maybe you're thinking of a guy who's physically abusive. Okay, well, you're not physically abusive, but maybe you're emotionally abusive like this guy. Like, that is emotionally abusive. You do not say that to a woman. I'm going to admit I have, because that's what I witnessed growing up with my parents' marriage, right? But eventually it's like I'm Jewish, so it's like a rabbi says, oh, well, you didn't know, but now you do, right? Especially like when it comes to like kosher and stuff like that. Oh, you didn't know that wasn't kosher? Okay, that's fine, but now you do, right? Mm-hmm. So going back to the Matrix, just like in the Matrix 3, you have to realize that you're actually both Neo and the machine. And this entire time, you've actually been fighting with yourself. And so just like they did in the Matrix 3, you're going to have to kill each other to move forward. And I know that's really deep, but the thing is, Alec, is that it does get that deep, and it does involve that amount of work and personal development, especially with the flawed statement of women like jerks and assholes. Well, that right there is an egotistical jerk statement to make, because why in the world would you put your problems on somebody else? Why would you say that women are attracted to jerks and assholes? Because that certainly doesn't help you. That certainly doesn't get you anywhere. If all women are attracted to jerks and assholes, well then, dude, if you want to get laid, you're just going to have to be a jerk or an asshole then, right?
So going back to your first reaction and what you're saying right now, if a guy has come to a point where he's ready to embrace reality, what are some of those qualities of these quote unquote jerks or assholes that are attractive to women that these quote unquote nice guys could actually learn from? Like, what are the specific traits that they display that are attractive?
Well, there's definitely a few things that they do. And it's most notably in the beginning, because I've talked to a lot of women about this. It's most notably in the beginning. Eventually, the guy breaks down and he stops putting on a facade, or he actually really is a jerk or whatever. But I know that guys listening in are like, oh, one more person who says this, but it's true. It comes down to confidence. It comes down to the fact that the nice guy is sitting in the darkest part of the bar in the corner, working up the courage to go talk to a girl. And then what does the jerk do? While the nice guy is working up the courage, the jerk's already dancing with her on the dance floor because he walked up to her, which takes confidence. Maybe he bought her a drink, or maybe he opened her up and started talking to her. That takes confidence. He invited her out to the dance floor. That takes confidence. He's dancing with her. That takes confidence. He's invited her home. That takes confidence. Right? And whether or not they sleep together, that's something that they can decide. But women are incredibly attracted to confidence. And if she's already had something to drink and she likes the guy, she probably slept with him. And the entire time, what's the nice guy doing? He's off in the corner, still working up the courage. But after that girl got taken, now he's going to go work up the courage to go talk to the next girl in the bar. And I've been there. I've done this. I know how it feels. Like, that guy took her. He was probably a jerk anyway. Well, that doesn't fix the problem, but okay, I'll work up the courage to go talk to that girl. And, the other thing too is I just recently wrote a blog post called The Secret of Bad Boys.
Yes. So that's actually, in a sneaky kind of way, is exactly what I was getting at. So let's hear it.
Sure. The Secret of Bad Boys. I know that one resonated big time. I definitely got a lot of guys right into me and were just like, dude, this is amazing. I'm like, I know. Thank you. You're welcome. Because going back to that thing of like, well, let's distill the traits of what's working. Well, the secret of bad boys, in a nutshell, Alec, is that they make women want more. And after studying seduction That's the art of seduction. The art of seduction is making somebody want more. That's what teasing somebody is, or seducing somebody is, making them want more. When you give in, the seduction is over, right? So to go deeper on that, one of the things that a lot of nice guys typically tend to do or tend to go wrong is that they will smother women until they suffocate the poor girl, and not to submission like they would like, oh, this girl's gonna be my girlfriend now because I suffocated her. They suffocate the poor girl to death, right? It's kind of like the old story of, the girl who loved the puppy so much that she hugged it until it suffocated and it died. And the thing is, I was guilty of this too. We think that if we like a girl, we should tell her constantly, we should text her constantly, we should always be with her, etc. One of the guys who came in to talk to me actually ended up booking a coaching session with me, and he's like, dude, I've got a girlfriend and I think I'm spending too much time with her, because that's one of the things that bad boys don't do, right? What a bad boy does is he lets the girl know that he likes her simply by spending just enough time with her, by kissing her, by making moves on her. He might even tell her hey, I like you, right? But then he goes back to living his life, whatever that is. And what ends up happening is that she wonders about him. And that's what exactly she wants to do. Because nice guys take away the wonder and the spontaneity and the mystery and the adventure. And I've had guys write in and they're like, oh, I don't want to be mysterious. I don't want to be aloof. I'm like, dude, go to dictionary.com right now. Type in the word romance. Mystery is in the definition of romance. Romance is supposed to be mysterious. It's supposed to be adventurous. It's supposed to be spontaneous. And the thing with bad boys is they have that down perfectly. They leave the girl wondering where he is, what he's doing, whom he's with. And the thing is that she starts to dream about being there with him. It's a gift. It's not a curse, it's a gift. And nice guys should definitely learn from it, because you want to be able to give her the gift of wondering about you, because we don't fall in love with somebody when they're with us. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you think back to any point in time you fell in love with a girl, especially even one that you were just friends with, or you didn't even really know, or maybe you didn't even know at all. How in the world could you fall in love with somebody you didn't even know at all? Because you created something in your mind that wasn't there. And that's exactly what's happening when these bad boys say, hey, baby, I really like you, but I got a jet. I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z, or whatever the case might be. So one way that I've adapted this, because the guy that I did a session with, he's like, I've heard in the PUA community that you're supposed to let your girlfriend see you talking to other women so she can get jealous. And I was like, dude, that's playing with fire. And not in a good way. Trust me on that one. There's healthier ways to do this. Such as, for example, with me, right now I'm recording this podcast with you. So my cell phone is turned off and it's not even anywhere near me. So any number of the girls who I'm dating who want to get a hold of me, they can't. And they're wondering, what's he doing? Where's he at? Who's he with? And then when I'm going to come back, I'm going to turn my phone on. I'm like, yeah, and I was actually just doing this interview with Alec Chase of Men's Dating Mastery, and I was sharing tons of value with his audience. It was so amazing. I loved it. And now what they're doing is they're being like, oh my God, some girls, they know about it. Other girls, they might not know about it, right? So the girls who do know about it, they're not going to bother me. But the girls who don't know about it, if I go turn on my phone, I might have some text messages or missed calls or whatever. But the thing is that I'm dedicating my time right now 100% to Alec, to you, and to your audience, because that's what you guys deserve, because that's fair to you. But at the same time, am I being a bad boy? No, but I'm giving the other girls that I'm dating something to wonder about. What's he doing? Where's he with? For the girls who do know, they're like, I wonder how it's going. And then when I come back and I talk about it, it's something positive. It's not, oh, you saw me talking to those other girls. That's just playing with fire. It's something incredibly constructive, because the girls who are dating me know that I do this stuff, and they believe in me, and they believe in what I'm doing, and they feel that it's great and empowering. And so I start to become even more incredibly attractive. And then oh, I want to hear what it sounds like. I'm like, well, I can't show you yet. Alex got the recording, but when I get the link, I'll show you. Obviously, what jerks and assholes do is they never would show her the link, but I'll show them the link, right? So that's kind of another thing that nice guys can borrow is, for example, I've had female friends who they meet a guy, they make plans to go do something, and the guy never shows up and he never answers his phone. And then the girl's destroyed, right? So the thing that a nice guy can do is definitely borrow from that, realize that this sense of mystery, the sense of leaving her wanting more, is a gift. It's not a curse. Some other things that bad boys do that nice guys can learn from, and I talked about this more with confidence, but 3 key things that make up confidence, because a lot of times, and I know I was there too, I'm there with you, dude. I'm there with you, Brohim. I know what this is like. I remember when I first started learning this stuff, I was like, if one more dating coach tells me to be confident, I am going to scream. What is confidence? Can anybody explain it? And, in a book that I have called 25 Ways to be Irresistible to Women, one of the ways is confidence, and I do explain it. It means to have faith in yourself. Literally, con means with, fid means faith, and ness is like the essence of being. So it means that you have faith in yourself. But a lot of the things that guys do can make up confidence. So, for example, bad boys are typically pretty dominant. They're pretty decisive. And they're usually certain. They're usually quite certain. And so to break those down, a lot of times guys confuse dominant with domineering, and it's not. Domineering comes from a very ugly place. It comes from a very negative place. It comes from putting people down. I refer to it as the wife beater type of thing. Whereas dominant, I refer to that more of like the soldier or the police officer or James Bond, right? Dominant means to look out for the best of the group and take on the leadership role, right? And the thing with a lot of nice guys, what they do is they do the opposite. They let life guide them instead of making choices and guiding their own life, And a lot of times, for example, we think, the military, it's all about following orders, but no, not to an extent, because it's a unified group. You have to follow orders, but there's definitely a lot of leadership that's taught, especially in a lot of the more rogue squadrons, I guess you could say. Like I was recently reading a book on Navy SEALs, and one of the things that they learn is how to independently have mental toughness and dominance to look out for the best of the group, right? And the other thing that nice guys don't do is they don't stand up for themselves, or they don't stand up for the women in their life, which is huge. It's important. I can't remember how many times I used to think, it's the year, insert year here. Women should stand up for themselves. There was times where there was a situation and I did not stand up for the girl. Ooh, was I in trouble? And there's a lot of guys who still do it to this day. I see them on Twitter all the time. It's 2015. Girls should stand up for themselves. Like, no, dude, you're the man. I know that it sounds a little weird, but that's what you're supposed to do. Be dominant. You want women to like you. Be a man. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for her. Stand up for the people in your life. Next thing is be decisive. It means make decisions and make them fast. Know what your values are. You know what I'm saying? If you value freedom, for example, then it should be pretty easy. If somebody says, hey, do you want to go in this cage? Nope. Why not? Well, I value freedom, and being in a cage doesn't sound like that would be in line with my value system of freedom, right? Or, for example, I value health and wellness. So, for example, I was out the other day with, God, she was gorgeous, gorgeous. But she made fun of me for ordering a salad. Guess what happened? Didn't go out with her again, right? Because my value system is health and wellness. And if I'm out with this girl, it doesn't matter that she was hot. She's just one of those girls who's just beautiful. It happens, right? It'll catch up with her. Right? But a lot of nice guys want decisions made for them. Back to that lack of dominance, right? What's the opposite of dominance? It's being submissive, right? Not subservient. That's the opposite of domineering. That's an ugly relationship. When you have domineering person with a subservient person, that's just ugly, right? But they're submissive, right? And so it's not an attractive trait to want to have decisions made for you. And I know this is going to sound so bad, but it's true. Leave being indecisive up to women. It's not that they can't make decisions. It's just that you're the man, so therefore you should be the one making decisions. And by being decisive, you allow her to relax into your masculinity. And that's really powerful because, like I said, it sounds rude at first, but once you experience a woman relaxing into your masculinity and therefore relaxing into her femininity, you get to see a woman vibrating, like actually vibrating. And she has this beautiful feminine glow. And the best way I can describe it is it's like gravity no longer applies to her. She's just floating. And it's beautiful. And then obviously being more masculine, you start to be a little more anchored in the universe as well. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's almost like you're the rock and she's the tide ebbing and flowing around you. And it's beautiful. I know it sounds so weird, especially for a lot of guys who are just starting out. I know it sounded weird to me. I'm like, no, it's 2015. We're going to be equals. It's like, not in romance. Not in romance. It's not equal in romance by any means. One person, not all the time, that can ebb and flow, right? There's going to be areas where you'll be dominant and areas where she's submissive and vice versa, right? And it's always going to ebb and flow. But somebody has to be dominant. Somebody has to be submissive. Somebody has to make decisions. And unfortunately for you, as you're being the man, she's going to want you to make those decisions most of the time. Unless, of course, she's a very masculine person. But just know that it's a masculine trait to be dominant. It's a masculine trait to be decisive. And it's also a masculine trait to be certain. I'm not saying that men should do it. I'm just saying it's a masculine trait. Because there's the energy of yin and yang, the opposing forces of positive and negative, right? Day and night. There's masculine and feminine. A man could be masculine or feminine, right? We see this all the time. But it's just about owning what it is that you want. And if you want a super feminine woman, you're going to need to be super masculine yourself. And certain means showing certainty. Right? When a guy walks up to a girl at a bar, he's certain that his approach is going to work. He's being dominant. He's looking out for her. Hey, let's go dance because this is going to be the best activity that we can do. And he's being decisive. Let's go right over there onto that part of the floor. And he's guiding her. He's walking her. He's taking her by the hand. Women love this. I know it sounded so weird when I first started out, but I remember distinctly when I was told, like, tell a girl where it is that you are going to take her and what time and when. I was like, oh, I'm going to sound like such a jerk. And I remember firing off that text, meet me at, the Starbucks at 109 in Jasper at 7 p.m. And I remember like, oh, I'm going to get rejected. She's just going to be like, oh, you jerk. And she wrote back, that sounds awesome. Deal. See you then. Smiley face. And I was like, what? And I've never looked back since. And when she showed up, I was like, okay, well, the dating coach that I talked to said, choose the location that we're going to sit at. So I'm like, all right, we're going to go sit over there. The girl was like, okay. And it's funny, at that point, I was like, God, I don't want daughters. This is scary. But that's why it becomes such a huge responsibility for you as a genuinely nice guy who's being dominant, decisive, and certain that you're also a good guy. You've got great morals and you're in charge of things. Because, for example, like with James Bond, if you end up being wrong about the decision that you dominantly made, then apologize. But until then, assume that you're right. Assume that everyone will benefit from your decisions. Assume that everything's going to be good and act accordingly. And I know what you're probably thinking too is, okay, well, if I'm going to assume that everything's going to be okay, like that's not reality. Well, there really is only as much to reality as we give it when it comes to the perception of human experience. So make it work in your favor and be certain about the things that you're doing. And I assure you, try it. Try it once. However you think the situation is going to unfold, and as long as you act within that thought, as long as you act within those parameters, it's going to happen that way. And I know that's scary to think that you can control quite a bit more of your universe than you originally thought, but you can, and it's through thought. So, Alec, I know that was kind of long-winded, but there's 3 main traits I think that bad boys are doing. Most notably, to sum it up, they're leaving the girl to want more. They're not smothering her. They're not texting her constantly. They're making her wonder, where is he? Who's he with? What's he doing? And the healthy way to do that is to be doing something with your life, living out your truth, your passion, and your vision. Be working on something. And when you're working on it, have your full attention on it because it's fair. But when you're with her, have your full attention with her because that's fair. And then breaking it down to what 3 things you can do that show extreme amounts of confidence. Be dominant. Look out for the group. Be decisive. Make decisions. And be certain you're making the right decision. If you're wrong, apologize. It's not the end of the world. But be certain about those decisions that you're dominantly making. And you'll come across as confident and you're going to get the girl.
Thank you. That was an excellent answer. And I think that was crystal clear. So thanks for that. I'd like to jump back yet again, back to your story about you being in the dorm room with a girl who clearly wanted to get intimate with you and you not catching on to that and her being upset. So this ties in to another article you wrote, and the title is very self-explanatory. Should nice guys have sex on the first date? So Two-part question. First, what excuses do you find that guys make for not going for it on the first date? And then what do you think they should do? Should they actually make a move for sex on a first date?
Okay. So yeah, no, I'm glad that you broke that down into 2 questions. That's awesome. One, did I ever mention that aside from being incredibly handsome, one of the things I like about you is that you don't ask like, I've got 1 question, then you actually ask like 5 questions, and then I have to be like, you actually asked me like 5 questions. So high five. I appreciate that.
And I think this is actually literally question number 5.
Sweet. Sweet. Yeah. No, this is good. Because just this last weekend, I sat down. For whatever reason, I was craving Revenge of the Nerds. I haven't watched Revenge of the Nerds in I don't know how long. But for whatever reason, I was like, I want to watch Revenge of the Nerds. You know, like sometimes you just get this thing where like, I want to watch this particular movie, like out of freaking nowhere. You know, strangeness of the universe. But there was number one, it's a really good movie, going back to Nice Guys. It's a really good movie demonstrating that one of the beautiful things about Revenge of the Nerds, as a quick side note, is it's okay to be a nerd. You've got a skill set that makes the world a better place. If you're an engineer or whatever it is that you are, we need you. Right? It's important. However, social skills and things like that are also very important. And it's about taking what it is that's good about you and strengthening it, and whatever it is that's not one of your assets, you know, casting it to the wayside. But there was a particular point in the movie where one of the nerds had met a girl in like computer class, and later on in the day, they're back in the gym because they got kicked out of their dorm. And so they were staying in the gym in the meantime, and they were standing in line at like a makeshift cafeteria. And the 2 main characters were talking. One was the nerd who met the girl in the computer class. The other one was just the other main character. I can't remember their names, but they were talking about this girl that he met. And he was like, she's a really nice girl. And then, you know, his friend was like, oh, that's great that she's a nice girl. And then there's this character, Booger, who is probably the least, I don't know, shy one out of the bunch, I guess you could say. And Booger just looked at him and he said, okay, well, have you slept with her yet? Or did you pork her yet? He said something like that. And the guy who met the girl said, she's not that kind of girl. And then Booger, without hesitating, came back with, what do you mean she's not that kind of girl? Does she have a penis?
Right.
And, you know, and I was just like, lock that in place to use at some point, and in which case that point is now, right? But the biggest excuse that I hear from guys is that she's not like that. And I used to say this all the time myself. I analyze messages that guys send to girls on my podcast on Fridays that girls send to me. They're like, oh, look at this one. Female friends and things like that. Girls that I'm dating who still have accounts. They're not checking them, but they still get messages and things like that. And also guys who come in for coaching. I help them with their messages. And I see this all the time. It's going to sound so counterintuitive, I know, but girls are not looking for friends. They're not. Of course she's like that. If you want a friend, go meet a nice boy who shares your same interests. If you want to be logical, go do your math homework. Because when you say she's not like that, it really translates to a lot of backlog in the mind of the nice guy. Because even if she said she's not like that, right, which a lot of girls will, it's important for them to look like a lady on the street, right? And of course, we play that game, right? It's like one of the girls that I'm seeing today said, we were like dirty texting to each other, and she was like, I said something about her being a lady, and she was like, oh, I'm a lady for sure, but there's times when I don't have to be one, which is incredibly sexual. But either way, it's like, you appreciate both sides of her. And it's important for that guy to ask himself why he feels that she's not like that. Because usually what it comes down to, in all honesty, if we dig deep, it's feeling insecure, it's feeling unconfident, it's feeling unskilled with women. It's like this idea of sex on a first date, or sex in general, even for that matter, isn't even possible. And I remember feeling this way too. It was like, oh man, I hope I get laid. It was like I spent all this time dreaming about it. Like it's some Hollywood gimmick or Hollywood movie line, something you only see in the movies, or that some other guy you hear about, you know, got to sleep with a girl or whatever. You're talking with your friends like, ooh, I had sex. Like I remember being friends with guys, the whole lot of us, like years would go by, right? It's like sex became this like unicorn. You know, it's about feeling like sex, speaking of unicorns, is like some magical unicorn over the rainbow type of experience that a nice guy is hoping to get, rather than a natural part of the interaction between man and woman, or if you're gay, whatever the case may be, but it's a natural interaction between two polar opposites on the sexual spectrum. Even with gays and lesbians, one person's playing the masculine role, one person's playing the feminine role. One of my favorite comments from gay people is, it's only the straight people who have it confused, which I think is funny. But
yeah, I've heard that before.
But the thing is that rather than being comfortable with doing and progressing towards the sex at whatever speed the energy of the interaction deems necessary, it's almost just like, oh, this can happen. Really what it comes down to is just a lack of skill, a lack of experience. If a guy says that, what it tells me is that he's spent way more time with himself than he has with women, because women are very much like that. Of course, like that. Right? So, like I mentioned before, I see it all the time in online dating messages that I'm analyzing, either for the Nice Guy Dating Daily podcast or for clients. It's that nice guys think that girls are there for friendship. They're not. They're there for sex. Maybe not on the first date, maybe not on the second date, right? It depends on the culture. It depends on her standards. Those all obviously need to be respected. It's like I always said, and I say it in 25 Ways to Be Irresistible to Women, respecting a woman means that if she opens her borders, allow it. However, if she closes her borders, allow it. And so it's knowing whether her borders are open or closed and allowing that, right? Not judging her because she opened her borders and presuming that she never opens her borders. Like, both are the side of the same coin. It's ugly, right?
Right.
So maybe not on the first date, maybe not on the second date, but like, my God, man, she is like that. And one of the things that I say is, how did you get here? By your dad thinking that your mom wasn't like that? Or did your dad know that your mom was like that and he pursued her and now you're here?
Yeah, well, and if I could add something to that, I think there's another thing at play here, and that's that guys in our society are walking around with this completely absurd Madonna Whore Complex where they all want and dream of a very sexual woman, a promiscuous woman. But as soon as they see a girl that they are infatuated with and the girl that they really want, well, she can't possibly be like that because they like her. And if they like her, that means she's a good girl. And well, a good girl couldn't possibly ever want sex on the first date, right? So it's this desexualization of women that has occurred in our society and guys that bought into it.
Yeah. It really comes from the Victorian age in England, where you married a woman and she was this saintly angel thing that you never had sex with and you never touched. And by God, the women went nuts. They actually did. Because they weren't getting the kind of attention that is natural for them. It's completely 100% natural. And so the men, on the other hand, like, oh boy, society, they would go to brothels and whorehouses where they would do whatever they want with these women. But these are not, so that created this Madonna Whore Complex of like, well, there's the woman you marry and she's saintly and you never touch her. And there is this woman at the brothel who is a whore and you do whatever you want with her, but you would never, ever in a moment dream to bring her home to mom, kind of thing. And this actually goes really deep into our society, like really deep. There's a book called Sex at Dawn that I really recommend that goes deeply into this, where it talks about, for example, hysteria in women actually was sexual frustration. And women were being treated for quote unquote hysteria. And the way that they were being treated was doctors would actually masturbate these girls or like fondle, like play with these girls or whatever, and bring them to orgasm, and it would cure their hysteria. And I wish I were making this up, but I'm not. And it really shows just how ridiculous society can be. The first vibrator was actually invented for medicinal use to cure women of hysteria. And I can't remember the name of the company that did it. It's like Huntington Beach or something like that. Like some company that now makes your coffee maker or your blender or whatever, right? But they invented the first vibrator for medicinal use because we were in this society that said, oh yeah, that's my wife, she's an angel, of course I would never sleep with her. We sleep in separate beds, we sleep in separate rooms, and so on and so forth, right? Or if they do sleep with each other, it's just, to have children, and then once the children are there, that's it, kind of thing. And it goes deep, man. It goes deep. Apparently, and you can look this up. It's on Wikipedia. You could probably go to your local public library, open a book, take a look. John Kellogg, the guy who made Kellogg's cereal, was like a Puritan of this fashion, and he bragged and boasted that he had not slept with his wife in like 40 some years. And he was vehemently against male masturbation, which we could get into that topic itself. I'll kind of avoid that one, but basically he was a large proponent of circumcision to prevent boys from masturbating. He came up with contraptions to put on boys' penises so that they wouldn't masturbate. He actually invented Kellogg's cornflakes and instituted it in his work, because apparently eating cornflakes would prevent you from masturbating. And then his friend, I can't remember their first name, but his last name was Graham, invented Graham flour and invented Graham crackers. And that's original purpose too, is to prevent kids from masturbating. And so carrying forward, we now are still stuck with this ridiculous, disgusting, non-natural view of how things are supposed to work. And it's like, no, like, kind of one of the things you mentioned, Alec, was, well, I like her, so therefore she's a good girl. And, I can empathize with that because I used to be there too. But now my response to that would be, you haven't gone out with enough girls. You need to spend more time with more girls, specifically incredibly attractive ones that you think that you would never get, so that you can see them, for example, belching. You can see them eating. You can see them forgetting stuff. You can see them being a bitch. You can see them pooping on the toilet. You can see them doing things that bring them back down to life for you, so that you recognize that, no, they're just people too, and they're out there trying to figure out life too, right?
Yeah.
So the second part of your question is, should guys go for it? Well, I don't think that guys should push for it. And I think it's disgusting when I hear that guys do. I've heard of all kinds of things about, ways to trick women into sleeping with them on the first date. And it's just like, dude, like, what's wrong with you? But go with the flow. I mean, if the energy of the date is incredibly sexual, then ride that wave, right? If it's not, then whatever. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had a girl because she heard somewhere that, she should wait 3 dates. It's one of my favorites. The last girl that told me, actually pretty much all the girls that tell me that, they're like, oh, I don't sleep with a guy on the third date, because it's usually like the first or second date. And I've been told I'm pretty lusty. I've worked on that. But we're typically going at it by the second date. And I've had girls go through with it. And I've had girls who are like, oh, I don't sleep with a guy until the third date. And they look so proud of themselves. And then they don't realize that they're sitting on top of Kevin Alexander. And then I look at her and I go, oh, that's cool. Well, I don't sleep with girls until the fourth date. And then they're like, what? He just took it away from me. How dare he take the power away from me? And then it's funny, the last girl that I said that to, she actually came over in between date 2 and date 3. In her mind, it was the third time seeing me, so it was okay, right? I mean, girls make up all kinds of rules, but it's further proof that they are like that. It's what they want, right? It's just that they don't want you to push for it in a disrespectful way. They don't want you to be disrespectful about it. So another thing to clarify is that the purpose of going on a date is not to be friends. It's not to find commonality. I can't tell you how many guys I've seen do that. They're like looking for commonality, right? Like, oh, great, we're both into history. Like, she's not going to want to sleep with you because you're both into history, right? You can find that stuff out later when you actually logically decide to be in a relationship. But in the beginning, it's not to see if she likes you. Assume that she already does like you enough. And that's why you're on the date. That's why she agreed to be there with you, is because she likes you enough in a romantic way. This guy's really cute. I'd love to find out more about him, not in so much of a logical way, but I've talked to women about this. I have them on my podcast. They want to see what kind of moves you're going to make in the beginning. Like, ooh, this is going to be cool. We're going to go for pizza, and I want to see what kind of moves he makes, right? The purpose of being on that date, that first date, really is to hold hands, to hold each other, put your arm around her, to hug, to potentially kiss, maybe even have sex. It all depends on how that energy goes. And as a nice guy who finishes first with women, she should definitely have the gift of your lips on hers no later than the second date, first date preferable. I mean, it depends on culture and obviously, how comfortable you are with things. But I mean, assume that the reason she's going out with you is because she finds you attractive physically already. She wants to see what kind of moves you make. So make those moves. don't make the whole date about that, right? But I went out with a girl for the first time. Was it Friday night? Yeah, it was Friday night. On that date, we were high-fiving, holding hands. I had my arm around her. We kissed, everything. We didn't have sex, but it was definitely very clear by the end of that first date that it was on. Wherever it is that we go, we'll figure that out later, but we're definitely into each other. And so I think it's kind of long-winded, but to answer your question, number one, it's guys having this Madonna Whore Complex, that she's not like that. No, that's actually incredibly disrespectful. That's actually incredibly rude to think that way about her, because it dehumanizes her. It's not fair to her. She is that kind of person. She does have those needs. Just be respectful about it. And then to answer your second question, should guys do it? Yeah. Life's too short to not have sex, man. Have more sex. Like, I can't tell you how good it is for you to have sex. Like, you actually get nutritional value from having sex. Like, have sex. Do it. You'll be happier. Your hair will grow faster. Your skin will clear up. It'll start to glow. I mean, there's even been medical studies done to find out that, for example, there's nutrients in her saliva that you receive, and your saliva that she receives, in vaginal fluid and semen and all kinds of things like that. Like, we are intended as a species to have actually quite a bit of sex, because if you think about it, if every time you had sex it amounted in pregnancy, we have a lot more people on the planet than we do. But how many times have you come across people who have been trying for years? It is actually not that easy to get pregnant. I know there's going to be the odd case, and I've definitely heard of a few, trust me, and I have a little guy, trust me, I know. However, it took about, I think about 6 months of lots of sex with the same girl before my little guy Michael came along. So compare that to other animals who just squirt once and they have a whole hatchling of eggs. It's actually really hard for us to get pregnant, because we're actually designed to be having a tremendous amount of sex, more so than we have. And I think a lot of the problems that we have in society is because people are so pent up and confused about what to do. So ride that wave, man. If that's where it's going, go there. Don't judge her for it. She doesn't deserve that. That's not fair to her. Right? She's a human being who has a soul, who wants to be free and has needs. And you're giving her the gift of what it is that you have to offer to meet those needs. It's very healthy. It's very natural.
Yeah, when guys bring up the question of when is the right time to have sex or to initiate sex, my personal philosophy is you have sex when you both feel like having sex. Right? Mm-hmm. When the desire is there and the energy is there and you're both into it, that's the time. And that could happen in a minute. That could happen after dating for a month, but that's the right time.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned that too, because for example, with the girls, like, I don't know who said it, somebody said it somewhere, wait the third date or the fifth date or whatever. Whenever a girl says that, it starts to mount pressure, and I've noticed that it's like, okay, we're on the third date now, and well, I guess it means we're supposed to have sex now. And a lot of times guys think, oh, as long as it happens, and it's like, well, actually, no. Like you said, it has to flow. It has to be natural. It sounds so woo-woo, I know, but sex is actually a spiritually uplifting, enlightening experience if you do it correctly.
Yeah, and guys a lot of times will have a scarcity mindset. They think of sex as this precious commodity that's really hard to get, and so if the opportunity arises, then they have to take it. And the reality is, once guys get used to the fact that, sex is not really that difficult to obtain, then they can allow themselves to be more discerning and be like, well, do I even want to have it? Because let's face it, you don't always want to have it. Right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it brings me to a really good point of last summer, I decided to be a man whore. Let's be honest. I was like, I wonder how many girls I can sleep with this summer. And there was instances where quite literally I finished up with one girl. Can't remember her name. It sounds so bad. Oh, Kevin. But there were I was dating quite a few girls at that particular point in time. And one girl came over. She actually raped me. I kid you not. The power of fashion. If I can say anything. The power of fashion. I was like, should I wear this tonight? And she lit up. I was wearing this vest with this button-up shirt, and it all fit properly. And I had it buttoned down and rolled up, and I was wearing tight jeans that make my ass look really good. I cannot tell you enough the power of doing what women do, which is dressing for your assets, making you look good.
Pun intended on that one. Dressing
exactly.
assets.
Exactly. And she lit up and she jumped on me, right? But she'd been trying to hold back for a while too, and so it was just a rush of things. And so we finished up. It was funny. We had reservations for dinner, and we totally missed the reservation, so we went somewhere else. And then as I was out for dinner with this girl, another girl started texting me, "Hey, where are you at? What are you up to?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm out for dinner at Cactus Club." And she's like, "Oh, funny, me too." And I was like, "Oh boy." So I finished up with the girl that I was with, said goodbye to her, went home because the restaurant wasn't too far, cleaned off the perfume as much as I could of the other girl, went back to the restaurant, sat down, brought her back to my place, had sex with her. And so the next day I was incredibly sore because that weekend I had sex with quite a few girls, 2 in one night in one instance. The next day I was literally like, I don't even want to see a woman. Like I'm in pain. When you've had that much sex with that many different women and you're in pain. And I was like, I want to go to yoga. I don't want to take a day to myself. And that's that. But the thing is, at the end of the summer, I was just like, do I feel fulfilled? And I didn't. So one of the things that I think we're really stressing here is that it's not whether you have sex or not. It's, are you doing it when you want to? Are you doing it when she wants to? And is it something that's going to make both of you better people? Is it really going to be something that's going to unify rather than just something to mark off your list or, to get your jollies off? Because, if she's doing it just to do it, it's obvious and it's ugly. And if you're doing it just to do it, it's obvious and it's ugly. And sex is not meant to be ugly. It's meant to be beautiful. It's the most creative thing we can do as a species.
So we've had a long conversation here. But to wrap up, if you could offer one simple and actionable piece of advice for guys to improve their dating lives, what would it be?
Quite simply, never give up. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but here's the thing. If you're a nice guy listening to this podcast interview, then there's a part of you deep down inside, like I mentioned, that fire of passion. There's a part of you deep down inside burning like an ember, and it's just waiting to erupt into flames of that passion and that drive. So keep listening to these podcasts. Keep listening to what Alec has for you in store. Keep reading information that's out there. Seek out the help of coaches and other men who have, going back with the fire metaphor, other men who have blazed the path before you. Because I know it seems like there's a lot of information there. Some of it's hard to grasp. But with each and every piece of information that you take in, that ember deep down inside of you, it's like blowing oxygen on it. And the more information you give it, the more oxygen it gets. And soon enough, you'll be on fire. And I assure you that. So just never give up.
Fantastic. Thanks for that advice. And if guys wanted to learn more about you and how you can help them, where can they find you?
Sweet. Well, basically, if you're ready for coaching, then hit me up at kevin@niceguydating.ca. Or if you just want to say hi, hit me up at kevin@niceguydating.ca. And for everyone else, I've got a special gift for your listeners, Alex. So head over to niceguydating.ca/men's dating mastery. And after you enter in your email, you'll receive my best tips on how to get a girl to like you without being a jerk or an asshole.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. And as always, all of those links will be in the show notes. So guys, you can have easy access for them on mensdatingmastery.com. Kevin, thanks so much for being with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
That is it for this interview, guys. Don't forget that you can get Frank Kermit's 3 products, The Emotional Needs of Women ebook, The Art of Charisma from Creepy to Charisma 3-set audio program, and the Pimping Your Pad 5-set audio program by visiting the show notes for episodes 14, 15, or 16, all of which can be found on the podcast page at mensdatingmastery.com. Once you've found the show notes, click on the link under the title Free Giveaway at the top of the page to get the products. Remember that these products represent $270 in value and therefore will be available only until September 16th of 2015. So you only have a limited time to get them for free. After that, you'll have to shell out some money just like everybody else. Thanks for listening, and until next time.
Thank you for listening to Men's Dating Mastery, a podcast dedicated to improving the lives of men and the women around them.